Christy Mirack. Christy Mirack was a 25-year-old schoolteacher living in a 3-bedroom townhouse with her female roommate in East Lampeter Township. On December 21st, 1992, Christy woke up to get ready for work. Her roommate had already left for work. As she was about to leave her apartment, a man grabbed and shoved her back inside her apartment. At 9 a.m., when Christy didn't show for school, the school principal, Harry Goodman, called her home. But no one picked up her phone. He tried to call her again a few minutes later, but got no reply. As Christy's home was close to the school, Harry decided to check up on her. When Harry arrived at the house, the door was slightly ajar. When he pushed it open, he found Christy laying dead on the floor. She had been severely beaten on the head and the neck, strangled by hands and clothing, and sexually assaulted. He immediately notified the police. Police determined her time of death between 7 a.m. when her roommate left for work and 7:45 a.m. when she usually left for work. There was no sign of forced entry, and Christy had been beaten with an object sourced from inside the house. DNA in the form of semen was collected from the crime scene. Investigators said Mirack either knew her killer or opened the door expecting to see someone else. There was suspicion around a man, 20 years her senior and married, who had showed up at the elementary school with flowers for her the day after she was killed, and told school officials he didn't know she had died. He turned out to be Christy Mirack's secret boyfriend, but was also later cleared. In the years following Christy's murder, little progress was made in the search for her killer. A description of the suspect was released to the public. Police said they were looking for a man seen parking a medium-sized car across the street from Mirack's home and walking towards her home. They described him as a muscular white male driving a white car, a 1993 Dodge Shadow convertible, a 1999 Dodge Daytona ES, or a Toyota. However, no new leads were found. The police interviewed over 1,500 different suspects, but found no leads. About 60 men were eliminated as suspects using forensic testing. 25 years after the case went cold, in March of 2017, police decided to send the semen samples found at the crime scene to Parabon Nano Labs, a company specializing in DNA phenotyping, which is a technology used to predict an individual's appearance based on their DNA sequence. By November of 2017, Parabon had produced approximate images of what Christy's killer would have looked like at ages 25, 45, and 55. According to the laboratory findings, the killer was likely 3/4 Caucasian and 1/4 Latino, with fair skin and brown or hazel eyes and brown or black hair. The sketch was circulated in Lancaster County, but the police could not find any clues regarding the killer. Then, in 2018, Parabon submitted the DNA sequence recovered from the crime scene to the database GED-Match, which compares DNA sequences to find possible relatives and ancestors of an individual. In May of 2018, Parabon notified investigators that they had found a highly significant match to the DNA sequence on the GED-Match database. The individual whose DNA matched was likely to be a relative of Christy Mirack's killer. Investigators soon zeroed in on 49-year-old Raymond Rowe, who lived just 4 miles from where Christy had lived at the time of her murder and would have been 24 years old in 1992. Rowe was a father who had been married 4 times and was a regular churchgoer. He was also a DJ at both small and large clubs and was a minor celebrity in Lancaster County. He went by the name DJ Freeze and was the owner of his own company, Freeze Entertainment. He also ran his own DJ school and DJ equipment rental store. On May 31st, Raymond Rowe was DJing at a local school dance. Investigators went undercover at the function, and once the event came to an end, Rowe threw away a water bottle and a piece of chewing gum, which investigators retrieved. The items were collected and rushed to a state police crime lab for DNA testing. It was later found that the DNA on the objects matched the DNA found at the crime scene. On June 25, 2018, Raymond Rowe was arrested and sent to jail. Raymond Rowe eventually admitted he raped, strangled, and killed Christy Mirack on December 21, 1992. But he did not explain why. Neither have prosecutors. Rowe pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, rape, and burglary. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Arliss Perry. Arliss Perry was a 19-year-old woman from Bismarck, North Dakota, who moved to Stanford, California, to live with her husband Bruce Perry, a sophomore student at Stanford University. On the night of October 12, 1974, Arliss and Bruce got into a small argument about their car's tire pressure while walking around campus. Arliss decided that she wanted to be alone for a while and walked to the Stanford Memorial Church by herself. She went into the church shortly before midnight. According to the security guard, Crawford, he closed the church a little after midnight. Crawford told investigators that he found all the doors locked when he later checked the church at around 2 a.m. Bruce, meanwhile, was starting to get worried. Arliss still hadn't come back yet. After driving around campus looking for her, Bruce called the police at 3 a.m. They checked the church, but found the doors were still locked. At around 5:45 a.m., when Crawford came to open the church, he saw that the door on the west side of the church was open. It had been forced from the inside. As he walked inside, he discovered Arliss's body under a pew. She was laying on her back, naked from the waist down, with her legs spread apart. Her trousers had been removed and reportedly laid on top of her legs in reverse to the way that they'd normally be worn. She hadn't been raped, but she had been sexually assaulted with a candlestick. Another candlestick was pushed in between her breasts. Her death was caused by blows to the back of her head with an ice pick, which was found lodged into her skull. A palm print was found on one of the candles, and traces of semen was discovered on a kneeling pillow. 7 people, including Arliss and the guard, entered the building that evening, but only 6 were identified. Because of the location of the murder and the strange position of Arliss's body, some suggested she was killed as part of a satanic ritual. Journalist Maury Terry, in his 1987 book The Ultimate Evil, theorized that an associate of the serial killer David Berkowitz, the infamous son of Sam, was the murderer. In 1979, Berkowitz sent a book to the authorities in the North Dakota area, in which, in the margin, he reported to have scrawled, "Arliss Perry, hunted, stalked, slain, followed to California Stanford University." While behind bars, Berkowitz claimed that he joined a satanic cult in 1975 and that he'd killed in collaboration with other members, at least one of whom hailed from North Dakota. However, investigators interviewed him in prison and said he had nothing to contribute. Arliss's husband, Bruce, was also cleared. Stephen Crawford, the security guard, was interviewed and told police that on that night he had locked up the church at midnight and called out into the building to make sure there were no late-night worshippers. When he received the news that Arliss was missing, he claimed to search the building and found the victim's body. Police also later obtained DNA from Crawford. However, DNA testing was not yet available in criminal cases until the mid-1980s, and it was only in the past decade that law enforcement began using more sensitive DNA tests with greater frequency. The case remained open and active for many years and was never officially closed. In recent months and years, with recent advances in DNA technology, police were able to make a link between Crawford and the murder. Crawford was brought in for a series of interviews over 4 decades later. Soon, the DNA evidence became conclusive enough to obtain a search warrant of Crawford's San Jose apartment. On the morning of June 28, 2018, at about 9:04 a.m., officers knocked on the apartment door of Stephen Crawford. They made verbal contact with him through the closed door. Then they entered the apartment and saw him with a handgun. The officers retreated when they saw the firearm and heard a single gunshot as Crawford turned the gun on himself, committing suicide. Crawford was pronounced dead at the scene. A search of the man's apartment turned up a rambling suicide note dated 2 years prior, and a copy of The Ultimate Evil, an investigation into a dangerous satanic cult, book by Maury Terry, which contained in the first chapter the unsolved case of Arliss Perry. Stephen Crawford, who had been aware of law enforcement's increasing interest in him as a suspect, decided to take the coward's way out, instead of facing responsibility for his actions. April Tinsley. On April 1st, 1988, 8-year-old April Marie Tinsley was playing with some friends in West William Street in Fort Wayne, Indiana. While the kids were playing, it started to rain. April told her friends she was going to retrieve her umbrella, which she had just left at another friend's house a couple streets away, and then head back home. This was the last time she was seen alive. When April didn't arrive home for dinner, her mother Janet began to worry. Within an hour, she reported her missing to police. That evening, more than 100 people, including police and civilians, mounted a search for April in the area surrounding her home. However, despite the large amount of investigators and volunteers, they were unable to locate April. While searching the area, one witness reported seeing a man in his 30s driving a light blue pickup truck pull April into the truck and drive away. 3 days later, a jogger discovered a young girl's body in a ditch on DeKalb County Road 68 near Spencerville. She was later identified as April Tinsley. They discovered one of April's shoes about 1,000 feet west of the body. An autopsy was conducted, and it revealed that April had died 2 days before the jogger discovered her body. The cause of death was suffocation, and she had been sexually assaulted. Disturbingly, a sex toy was found not far from the crime scene. Investigators also found DNA that belonged to April's killer at the crime scene. Although the suspect's DNA was found on the victim's body, technology at the time was not advanced enough to find a match. Based on the witness description, a sketch of the killer was distributed in the area. But despite the eyewitness account and the DNA left behind, there were no arrests, and the case went cold. 2 years later, in 1990, not far from where April's body had been found, a teenage boy contacted police after discovering some graffiti scrawled in large letters across the door of a barn. The barn was around 10 miles from the site of the crime scene. The chilling message read, "I kill 8-year-old April May Tinsley. I will kill again. Ha ha." The message was allegedly written in 3 different medias: pencil, crayon, and permanent marker, and had many spelling errors. The case went cold again, with no new leads for 14 years. Then, in the spring of 2004, 16 years after April's death, more harassing and threatening notes, with the same spelling errors and handwriting, began to appear in different locations around Fort Wayne. The killer had left notes inside mailboxes and on the handlebars of little girls' bicycles. In total, 4 notes were found. The notes were all written on lined yellow paper and were left in Ziploc bags, along with used condoms and Polaroid photos that partially showed the killer's body and him masturbating. One of the letters read as follows: "Hi honey, I've been watching you. I'm the same person that kidnapped and raped and killed April Tinsley. You are my next victim. If you don't report this to police, or I don't see this in the paper tomorrow or on the local news, I will blow up your house." A DNA profile was developed based on the samples found in the used condoms, and it proved to be a match with the DNA found at the crime scene. Despite this, there were still no suspects. In 2018, investigators sent a sample of the killer's DNA to the forensics company Parabon Nanolabs, which used the genealogy website GEDmatch to identify the suspect's relatives. On July 2, 2018, the genealogist C.C. Moore narrowed down the list of suspects to 2 brothers. On July 6th, officers went through the trash of one of the suspects, John D. Miller, and recovered used condoms, which matched the DNA found on the victim. John D. Miller was immediately arrested. The investigators had reportedly asked, "Do you have any idea why we want to talk to you?" To which Miller answered, "April Tinsley." During his police interview, Miller confessed to the crime and explained what he did that day on the 1st of April, 1988. He said he abducted April while she was walking along Hoagland Avenue and brought her back to his trailer home in Graybill, where he sexually assaulted her and then suffocated her to death. After Tinsley was dead, Miller claimed he sexually assaulted her body again. The next morning, he drove to DeKalb County Road 68 and dumped her body into a ditch. The next day, he did not see any reports about the body in the news. He said he drove back to the crime scene to make sure the body was still there. It was at this time that he found one of April's shoes in his car and hurled it out the window of the moving vehicle as he passed the crime scene. On December 21, 2018, he was sentenced to 80 years in prison, 50 years for murder, and 30 years for child molestation.